Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a stack of source material that is, well, it's not just provocative. It's really foundational to how a huge number of people view modern global control.
It absolutely is.
We're plunging into this extraordinary collection of documents, all compiled by one man who claimed he had the proof.
The receipts, as they say.
Exactly. And what he alleges is a decades-long covert operation, a plan to control humanity through these interlocking secrets. And they span everything: global finance, political structures, and the ultimate government cover-up, extraterrestrial contact.
This is a huge one. And the sources, which are mostly tied to the work of William Cooper, they all operate from this single, terrifyingly cohesive premise.
Which is?
That world events are not just this chaotic mess of mistakes. The author insists they're intentionally directed by a very wealthy, very powerful elite who are following a meticulous, long-range master plan.
Okay, but the justification is what's really key here, right? The why.
That's the crucial part. The author argues that this absolute control is, in their eyes, a moral necessity. It's the only way for the elite to ensure the survival of their own principles and, paradoxically, the future stability of the human race itself.
So they see the rest of us as just hurtling toward self-destruction.
Pretty much. And that framing that these shadowy figures are actually acting responsibly by taking control, that is the ethical spine of the entire philosophy laid out in this material.
It reframes the whole thing. It's not just a power grab anymore. It's this kind of benevolent tyranny for the good of the planet.
It does. And Cooper's own stated philosophy is all about action. He says, reality must be discerned at all costs if we are to be a part of the future. He's arguing that the truth has to come out no matter how uncomfortable it is.
So our mission today is to methodically categorize all this. We have to analyze these incredibly dense claims about the true power structure, the one that's supposedly operating just beneath the surface of the governments we know.
We have to understand the specific mechanisms he's talking about.
Okay, so let's unpack the source material itself. I mean, the scope is just staggering, and you can't ignore the level of detail he provides.
No, you can't.
We've gone through his personal documentation, his really detailed military service records, alleged top-secret doctrines like the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars manual.
Which is supposed to be the blueprint for economic control.
Right. And then there are transcripts about FEMA planning for domestic crises and just extensive details on UFO cover-ups and the mechanics behind political assassinations.
And before we get into the meat of it, we really have to acknowledge the author's own motivation, the high personal cost he claims he paid for all this.
He saw himself as a messenger facing extreme harassment.
Oh, absolutely. He details death threats, constant surveillance, all starting after he began exposing this alleged disinformation network.
The foreword to his material even talked about the loss of his leg during his service. It calls it a badge of sincerity on your behalf.
It frames him as this genuine patriot whose claims have to be taken seriously because of his lifelong commitment, because of his suffering, and that sets this extremely serious, high-stakes tone for everything that follows.
All right, let's start with William Cooper himself, the messenger, because his military history is absolutely essential to all of his later claims. The credibility of everything rests on the kind of access he supposedly had.
It really does. I mean, his career path gave him this incredibly intimate access to two of the most secretive areas of Cold War intelligence.
He starts in the Air Force, right? 1961.
Yes, he enlists in the Air Force, and almost right away, he gets a secret security clearance, which is a key detail.
Yeah.
He's working on B-52 bombers, KC-135 refueling tankers for the Strategic Air Command SAC.
So he's right in the middle of the nuclear security matrix from the get-go.
Exactly. He even talks about witnessing a B-29 crash in the Azores. It was an early exposure for him to that high-level operational reality of the military.
Then he makes a pretty big switch. He goes over to the Navy in '64.
He does. In December 1964, he said it was a childhood dream, even though he apparently suffered from chronic seasickness, which is something.
Yeah.
He served on submarines, survived a near-catastrophic collision, and then later served on a gasoline tanker, the USS Tombigbee.
And he did a couple of major tours on that ship, including in Vietnam.
2 major Westpac tours, yes. He spent a full year anchored off the coast of Chu Lai, Vietnam, and at one point was even under machine gun fire.
But it's his voluntary transfer to Vietnam that really cements his intelligence exposure.
That's the one. He commanded a 45-foot picket boat crew for naval security and intelligence operating out of Da Nang. And that progression from SAC, the heart of nuclear deterrence, to naval intelligence, focused on covert ops in Vietnam, That's the whole foundation for his later claims that he eventually saw the real information.
Specifically, documents about the alien presence.
Right. The narrative is that he was vetted by the highest levels and put in positions where he had to handle the most sensitive data.
So, okay, he has this real information. He can't just drop it on the public without risking his life or having it instantly discredited. So the material details his own kind of counterintelligence op.
It's a fascinating psychological game he claimed to have played. He describes deliberately mixing bogus information with some real details and then leaking it to known intelligence agents.
He names names, too.
He does. Moore, Friedman, Shendera. He used the early online network, Paranet, to spread it, and his explicit purpose was to make them report him as a harmless, slightly paranoid cook.
So he was trying to get himself labeled as unreliable to buy himself time.
Exactly. The whole strategy was to divert surveillance, buy time, and then safely release the comprehensive real information to the public before the whole apparatus could neutralize him.
All right, so let's move from the messenger to the entity he was trying to expose. What is the scope and structure of this secret government alliance?
Well, the secret government is presented as this culmination of centuries of planning, all focused on one thing: the New World Order.
And according to the source, this goal is shared by a whole collection of groups that you wouldn't normally put together.
Not at all. We're talking about the Masons, Jesuits, Knights Templar, former Nazis, communists, and then the more modern groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, or CFR, and the Trilateral Commission. Cooper insists they're all just facets of one single philosophy,
which he calls Illuminism.
That's the key term, Illuminism.
So for someone who's not familiar with that term, what does it represent in this context?
Illuminism, as it's used here, it's philosophy that stresses this centralized, rational, hierarchical authority, but applied globally. It rejects traditional democracy, constitutional government,
in favor of rule by an elite.
An intellectual, enlightened elite who believe they know what's best for the masses. In the context of the New World Order, it means creating a single world government ruled by the highest levels of these secret societies. The end goal is total global control and resource management.
So when did these different groups supposedly set aside their differences and formally unite under this one umbrella?
The sources pinpoint a specific year, 1952. That was the pivotal moment for the formal alliance.
And who's in this alliance?
The agreement supposedly brought together the key ruling groups: the Black families, led by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, who claims descent from the Habsburg and Davidic lines.
Okay.
The Illuminati, or the Order, the infiltrated Vatican structure, and the highest ranks of the Freemasons. This unification is presented as the moment the New World Order went from a plan to an achievable certainty.
And the public, or at least semi-public, face of this unified power is the Bilderberg Group.
Precisely. The Bilderberg Group, organized in '52, first meeting in 1954, which is the same year the so-called Quiet War was declared, is claimed to be the most powerful secret organization on Earth.
But the power isn't the famous people who attend, right?
No, the core power is in its hidden command structure. It's supposedly 3 committees of 13 members each, so 39 total Illuminati, drawn from all the other secret groups. These 39 people operate year-round from offices in Switzerland, and they dictate the meeting agendas and who gets invited.
And the claim about the effectiveness of these meetings is, well, it's almost unbelievable.
The source material is adamant. It says that every policy or plan discussed at the annual Bilderberg meetings comes to pass, usually within 1 or 2 years.
So it's not a think tank, it's a command center.
That's the claim, that it's the entity actively directing this global quiet war and making the policy decisions that our constitutional governments then just execute.
Okay, we have to talk about the Vatican's role in this. How does the author claim the elite managed to capture such a powerful, ancient institution?
The claim is that the Vatican was infiltrated over many, many decades, and the core piece of evidence cited is the history of the papacy versus the Freemasons. Historically, various popes issued these powerful papal bulls against Freemasonry.
They condemned it.
Strongly. Pope Clement XII in 1738, Pope Leo III in 1884, they explicitly called Masonry an attempt to establish Satan's kingdom on earth.
So if the church was so against the Masons historically, what's the turning point that the source material points to?
The crucial moment, according to Cooper, came on November 27, 1983. That's when Pope John Paul II supposedly retracted all those centuries-old papal bulls.
And the significance of that is what?
It supposedly allowed Catholics to rejoin secret societies without fear of being excommunicated. The sources argue this is the strongest possible sign that the infiltration was complete, and that it paved the way for an Illuminati member to eventually be elected pope.
And the claim is that the Vatican is now actively preparing Catholics around the world to accept this new structure.
Absolutely. The sources point to the Pope John Paul II Center for Prayer and Study for Peace in Spring Lake, New Jersey. The leadership included really high-level globalists like former UN Secretary General Kurt Waldheim and J. Peter Grace, who headed the Knights of Malta in the U.S.
And this center has two functions, according to the source.
Two main functions, yes. First, to educate Catholics to accept the New World Order, and second, to house a sophisticated world peace solution computer that's connected to world capitals via satellite.
A supercomputer to solve global problems.
The claim is that all major nations have already agreed to give up their sovereignty to the Pope and submit future global problems to this computer for a solution once the NWO is publicly announced. The Vatican, in this story, is actively pushing for total disarmament and the end of sovereign nations.
Okay, so if the alliance and its political structure were formed in the early 50s, let's switch to the methodology. How do they plan to achieve their goals? This brings us to the core doctrine. Silent weapons for quiet wars.
The SWFQW manual, supposedly declared by the Bilderberg Group in 1954.
So what exactly is this silent weapon?
The material gives this terrifying, almost clinical definition. It says it shoots situations instead of bullets. It's repelled by data processing instead of a chemical reaction.
So it's operated by a programmer, not a general.
Exactly. Directed by a banking magnate originating from a computer. And crucially, it avoids any obvious physical injury. There's no explosive noise. Instead, it creates this crushing psychological pressure through economic means until the public, as the document says, cracks up.
And the public's inability to even know they're being attacked is central to its success. It's a kind of non-kinetic control.
That's a perfect way to put it. The inability to articulate or even perceive the attack is the key. It's a type of social engineering that systematically attacks the vitality, options, and mobility of every individual.
Wow.
By intentionally manipulating their sources of natural energy, like food and resources, and social energy, like community and safety. It leverages all their mental and emotional weaknesses. It's a slow, relentless form of control through invisible financial pressure.
Let's talk about where this idea came from. The sources trace it back to post-World War II research at Harvard, applying military modeling to the economy.
Right. The Harvard Economic Research Project started in 1948. It specifically aimed to extend World War II operations research, which was used to maximize military efficiency to control the entire economy.
And the conclusion they came to.
The grand conclusion was that with enough math and enough data, it would be just as easy to predict and control the trend of a national economy as it is to control the trajectory of a guided missile. The economy was basically going to be converted into a perfectly targetable, manageable system.
And to do that, the manual used these electrical circuit analogies, which is where it gets really technical. Can you break that down for us? How did they model an economy using physics?
They systematically translated financial concepts into precise physics terms, basically creating a closed-loop system model. So, for instance, charge equals dollars. Flow, or current, equals dollars of flow per year.
Okay.
The motivating force is consumer demand, and capacitance is production inventory, or stock. By monitoring and manipulating these variables, especially something called admittance, the relationship between demand and supply, they believed they could predict and direct all future economic activity.
It sounds incredibly mechanical, treating human activity like it's just a predictable electrical current.
It is.
But the manual identified a major challenge: system stability. The source mentions a problem of too much greed and too much population, which generates excessive economic inductance. Wait, what is inductance in human terms? Is that instability from too many people wanting too much stuff?
That's a great way to frame it. Inductance in this model is economic inertia and instability, and it's caused primarily by the uncontrolled energy of a large growing population seeking ever-increasing wealth, the greed aspect.
So this inductance has to be balanced or offset.
Right, with economic capacitance, meaning true resources, real value, goods and services. And since traditional warfare is destructive and inefficient for long-term control, the elite needed non-war alternatives to stabilize the system and reduce this dangerous inductance.
And the manual proposed two huge non-war alternatives, these economic flywheels, to absorb the instability. What was the first one?
The first, and maybe the most socially impactful, was creating an open-ended social welfare program.
How does that stabilize the system?
It creates a false capital industry that provides food and shelter for non-productive people. But the strategic purpose, as the source defines it, is just chilling. The recipients of this welfare become state property. They're a standing army for the elite because now they're completely dependent on an economic drug and they have to go to the state for their next fix.
So it manages the excess population while also creating a dependent, loyal base.
Exactly.
And the second major non-war alternative.
An enormous but fruitful, open-ended space program. This massive expenditure serves the exact same purpose. It stabilizes the economic system by absorbing vast sums of government spending and resources.
So at the end of the day, this whole quiet warfare project, using these flywheels, is all leading toward this long-term goal of, what was it, benevolent slavery and genocide.
That's the term used. The general public is explicitly defined in the manual as a herd of proliferating barbarians, a blight upon the face of the earth, which has to be managed and reduced to stabilize the world economy at a safe level.
So if the long-term goal is reduction, the short-term goal has to be massive psychological distraction to keep everyone compliant. How do they maintain control in the meantime?
The sources outline a three-part primary strategy of diversion. First, keep the public undisciplined and ignorant by sabotaging their mental activities.
Which means low-quality public education.
Systemically low quality, especially in math, logic, economics, and actively discouraging any real technical creativity among the population.
And the second part is about emotional saturation.
Exactly. They engage the public's emotions to an excessive degree through an unrelenting emotional affrontation and attacks. It's described as mental and emotional rape delivered via a constant barrage of sex, violence, and wars in the media.
Giving people what they desire in excess, junk food for thought.
That's the famous phrase from the source. It's the mechanism of cognitive sabotage. It's designed to keep the mind so saturated with sensationalism that critical thinking and logic just atrophy.
And the third part?
The third part is rewriting history and law to constantly shift the public's thinking away from their own personal needs and rights and towards fabricated external priorities like endless wars or manufactured social crises. The instruction for the controllers is blunt. Keep the public busy, busy, busy with no time to think, back on the farm with the other animals.
This psychological warfare takes an incredibly sophisticated leap with this alleged military shift from standard PSYOP to something called mind war.
This is detailed in a 1981 military memo. It defines mind war as a deliberate, aggressive, convincing system designed to fundamentally change the minds of entire populations, not just enemies in a war, using media and advanced technology.
What's the key difference from standard PSYOP?
The source says PSYOP often fails because it relies on distorting the truth. Mind war claims to operate on the principle that it always speaks the truth.
That's a fascinating paradox. How can manipulation always speak the truth?
Well, the source clarifies. The truth being communicated is defined as the will of the United States. If that preferred reality doesn't exist yet, the mind war apparatus will force it into existence through overwhelming political and military will.
So they make the statement true by the time you've processed it.
That's the idea. Mind war avoids the pitfalls of propaganda because its credibility has to be absolute. It doesn't just weaken the enemy, it's meant to significantly strengthen the U.S. internally by denying enemy propaganda any access at all.
This suggests techniques that go way beyond just media broadcasts. It sounds like they're using actual physics to influence people subconsciously.
This is where the source gets into really speculative territory. It details exploiting natural phenomena like atmospheric electromagnetic activity and air ionization.
Ionization.
Yeah, it notes that negative ions enhance alertness, while positive ions cause drowsiness and depression. The implication is that you can manipulate these conditions to affect public mood on a mass scale.
And the big one, the technology that really stands out, is the alleged use of extremely low-frequency waves, ELF waves.
Yes, they talk about using ELF waves up to 100 hertz, which can be generated artificially. The Navy's Project Sanguine used them for deep submarine communication. The source claims these waves are directed at large populations to shift brain activity towards passivity and compliance, making people more receptive to the mind war message.
But to maintain that crucial reputation for truth, the source actually rules out certain coercive methods.
Absolutely. The documents state that mind war operatives have to avoid anything that would ruin public trust. They explicitly say there's no need to resort to mind-weakening drugs like the ones the CIA famously explored.
Why not?
Because the author claims that exposing even a single instance of a method like that would cause unacceptable damage to mind war's reputation for truth. This bizarre emphasis on operational integrity, even inside a massive psych war program, is central to its supposed long-term effectiveness.
Okay, so if the silent weapon is the economic control, what happens when people reject it? That's where you need physical control. FEMA and the domestic police state. Let's focus on the claims about the U.S. government preparing for domestic crisis and the alleged mechanisms for suspending the Constitution.
The foundation for this police state structure is supposedly rooted in a historical ambiguity that gives the executive branch this powerful, hidden authority.
Which is what?
The sources claim that the United States has technically been under martial law since the Civil War because the Declaration was never officially rescinded.
So that lingering state provides the legal pretext for things like National Security Decision Directives, or NSDs.
That's exactly the claim. These NSDs are potent because they don't have to be reported to or reviewed by Congress. They allow the executive branch to skirt the balance of power and write law without anyone's knowledge.
Secret laws, essentially, written by the president.
Yes. It's seen as essential for the secret government to impose its will without any public debate.
And the sources claim this culminated in a specific action that transferred a huge amount of authority to the president.
According to Cooper's material, the Senate's passage of SB 2834 in 1990 was the critical moment. It was supposedly passed in the dead of night with only a minority of senators present, fraudulently introduced as a reform bill.
And it allegedly transferred most executive authority directly to the President George Bush at the time, making him a potential first American king.
And effectively putting the U.S. government fully into the hands of this secret government apparatus.
But the ultimate tool for this constitutional subversion, the real centerpiece, is Executive Order 11-1490.
EO 11-1490, signed by Nixon in 1969. It's critical because it replaced references to war and imminent attack with the phrase, any emergency that might conceivably occur.
So anything.
Anything. A financial collapse, a drug war, a major oil spill, a pandemic. This gives the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, the power to suspend the Constitution for virtually any crisis once the president declares a national emergency.
And the most chilling point the author makes about this is the absence of any recovery plan.
That is the critical missing piece. The sources emphasize, and I'm quoting here, I cannot find a plan or executive order anywhere which outlines any procedure or allowance for the restoration of the Constitution after a national emergency has ended.
So the conclusion is that no restoration is ever planned.
The author concludes that none is contemplated or desired by the people who designed this system. The national emergency, once it's declared, is meant to be permanent.
FEMA, then, isn't a disaster relief agency in this narrative. It's the tool that can be used to establish the police state.
It's designed to become the unelected national government in a declared emergency. The sources point to the RX-84A exercise in 1984, which was a test of this very system, specifically for mass internal dissent. Once the president declares an emergency, the director of FEMA gets direct command over all other federal agencies, the entire power of the state.
So what are the code names for the domestic control operations that FEMA would actually implement?
The sources detail two main programs that were investigated by journalists and foundations in the 70s and 80s. Garden Plot and Cable Splicer.
What are they?
Garden Plot is the field program. It's designed to physically control the population, stop people from gathering, neutralize dissenting leadership. Cable Splicer is the bureaucratic program for the orderly federal takeover of state and local governments. It makes sure local police and the National Guard fall under FEMA's direct command.
And the target of all this surveillance and preemptive action is clearly defined in the source material as domestic.
Oh, absolutely. The documents allege that the NSDs used for anti-terrorist training, which are supposedly about international terrorism, are actually a thinly disguised authorization of preemptive strikes and retaliatory raids against patriots in this country.
So they're targeting any group that could become the domestic enemy.
Right. And because these raids are easiest when people are predictably home, the sources give this very strange, specific piece of advice. You must never be found at home on any holiday.
Because that's the most likely time for mass roundups.
Low government staffing, public is distracted. Exactly.
The sources go into alarming detail about the alleged detention facilities, the concentration camps that would be used.
Specific locations are named, supposedly ratified by the Provost Marshal of the 5th Army's 300th Military Police POW Command. Places like Allenwood, Pennsylvania, with a claimed 12,000 capacity, El Reno, Oklahoma, Florence, Arizona, Avon Park, Florida.
And are all strategically located.
Critically, yes. near superhighways or railroad tracks, which the Department of Transportation would take over under EO 11490 to move large numbers of detainees very quickly.
This whole system of detention apparently relies on a bizarre legal mechanism using the Geneva Convention to legitimize imprisoning American citizens.
This is maybe the most alarming legal claim in the whole section. The Army's POW program is allegedly structured to address armed conflict, not of an international character occurring within the territory.
So civil war, domestic conflict.
Exactly. By classifying citizens who resist or even strongly criticize the state as the domestic enemy, they can be defined as prisoners of war. The sources warn that under these definitions, citizens exercising free speech could potentially be imprisoned or even sentenced to death, all under the guise of international law.
And beyond physical detention, there's a mechanism for mental control integrated into the healthcare system.
Yes. The regional government plans prioritize sweeping mental health programs. The Department of Health, Education and Welfare, HEW, allegedly working with the UN's World Health Organization, is tasked with determining if you are mentally disturbed because of your nationalistic tendencies, your love for the United States, or your adherence to any political or religious doctrine.
And they even identify a specific asylum rumored for these enemies.
After years of searching map, the author claims to have located the site of the alleged Alaska-Siberian Asylum southeast of Fairbanks. And the significance is that the railroad line running right through that area is the exact line the Department of Transportation would take over, placing it squarely in the operational framework.
And the sources even mention a nerve gas.
The BZ nerve gas stored at Pine Bluff Arsenal, it creates sleepiness and stupor. The suggestion is that it's a mechanism to make sure anyone targeted for detention arrives at these camps in a calm, non-combative state.
Okay, so we've established the structure, the economic weapon, the physical control. Now we have to shift to the deep cover-up that allegedly necessitated all of this extreme secrecy. The reality of extraterrestrial life. This secret, according to the source, is the most profound and guarded in human history.
The sources lay out this precise, terrifying timeline of early contact and recovery. Between January 47 and December 52, the U.S. government allegedly recovered at least 16 crashed or downed alien craft and 65 alien bodies.
A lot of them in New Mexico.
A heavy concentration there, yes. And the immediate administrative response was the formation of the CIA, originally the Central Intelligence Group, for the express, singular purpose of dealing with the alien presence.
But there was one specific discovery that reportedly caused the most extreme reaction. It moved the government from just curiosity to intense paranoia.
Yes. The documents highlight the shocking detail discovered inside two of the recovered vehicles, one from Aztec, New Mexico, and one from White Sands Proving Ground. They allegedly found a large number of human body parts stored inside.
Human body parts. That's the alleged turning point.
That's exactly the claim. This horrific discovery supposedly caused immediate internal panic and led to the secret lid being screwed down even tighter than the Manhattan Project had ever been. The organization structure quickly evolved from Project Cybone to Project GREG, which oversaw the public disinformation campaign, Project Glue Book.
And then contact became official in 1954. It moved from recovery to actual communication.
Right. Project Sigma and a new initiative, Plato, successfully used computer binary language to arrange a formal meeting. This event, which Cooper claims was later fictionalized in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, resulted in a formal treaty with the alien nation.
And a personnel exchange.
Yes, a personnel exchange. The source claims 16 carefully selected humans traveled to the alien point of origin, while alien guests remained here on Earth.
And the agreement included building secret bases immediately.
Yes, for technology exchange and to house the aliens. The sources claim bases were built underground on Indian reservations and at the ultimate super-secret site, Dreamland, or Area 51.
Area 51 became the site for Project Red Light,
dedicated to test flying the recovered alien craft, or IATs. The whole operation was put under the Navy, and security required not just a Q clearance, but presidential, executive, or majestic approval. And crucially, the sources allege the president himself, Eisenhower and later Kennedy, was denied clearance to even visit the site.
Okay, the logistics of funding something this enormous with over 75 deep underground facilities. How is this paid for without anyone being able to audit it?
This is the critical link to the dark economy. There was a multi-million-dollar secret fund kept by the military office of the White House. But the decisive mechanism for funding this staggering secrecy was achieved by cornering the illegal drug market.
The drug trade was the solution.
They decided they needed massive, untraceable, non-auditable cash flow, and that was it.
And the sources link this directly to key political figures, including George Bush.
The claim is that George Bush, who was then president and CEO of the offshore division of Zapata Oil, was approached to help. The plan allegedly involved using offshore drilling platforms as transshipment points for South American drugs, completely bypassing U.S. customs and law enforcement.
And that provided the cash flow for the black projects, which were controlled by this secret committee, Majesty 12, or MJ-12.
That's the alleged structure.
This alleged connection between black project funding, the drug trade, and the executive branch. It leads directly to the single most dramatic claim in the entire source material, the assassination of President Kennedy.
This is the absolute crest of the narrative. The sources claim that JFK discovered parts of the truth, both about the drug funding and possibly the extent of the alien presence.
So in 1963, he issued an ultimatum.
He did. An ultimatum to Majesty 12 to clean up the drug problem completely and prepare for a public reveal of the alien presence within a year. And because Kennedy was acting outside the control of the CFR and the elite policy committee, the Bilderberg power structure, his independent actions were seen as an existential threat to their whole timeline.
So the policy committee ordered the hit. But the specific mechanism described in the source material is deeply disturbing.
The policy committee allegedly ordered the assassination. The execution, according to the author's precise analysis of the Zapruder film, was carried out by the Secret Service agent driving his car, William Greer.
The driver.
The driver. The source insists that the act is plainly visible if you watch the film, and it advises you to watch the driver and not Kennedy when you view the film. The suggestion is that Greer turned and fired the fatal shot.
And the cover-up was managed by the very apparatus that supposedly ordered it.
The Warren Commission was allegedly managed by members of the Council on Foreign Relations. The purpose was strictly damage control, to snow the American people and stop them from ever blaming the Illuminati or MJ-12. By manufacturing the conclusion that Oswald was the lone assassin, they could maintain public faith in the constitutional system.
Okay, let's summarize the extreme measures allegedly taken by the elite to solve what they saw as the crisis of overpopulation.
The foundational decision was based on a series of studies going back to World War II and later confirmed by the Club of Rome studies in 57 and 68. They all concluded that civilization would collapse shortly after the year 2000 unless the global population was drastically curtailed.
So the strategy was to lower the birth rate and dramatically increase the death rate.
Exactly. This led to the creation of the Office of Population Affairs by Henry Kissinger, which pushed the agenda globally.
And the most controversial, chilling claim associated with increasing the death rate is the alleged link to the AIDS crisis.
The sources assert that the U.S. population was purposefully infected during the experimental hepatitis B vaccine trials. These were conducted by the CDC between 1978 and 1981.
In key metropolitan areas.
Yes. New York, San Francisco, and 4 other American cities. The sources allege that Dr. Wolf Schmunes, who the author notes was the ex-roommate of Pope John Paul II, was the mastermind. The ads for participants specifically targeted promiscuous homosexual male volunteers, effectively ensuring the virus was introduced into and spread within the gay community.
And the source claims the location of these tests was not accidental.
Not at all. The San Francisco Bay Area, one of the inoculation sites, was allegedly already a primary test site for CIA biological and chemical programs, including projects related to Legionnaire's disease and Project MK-Naomi, which is linked to AIDS. The conclusion drawn is that the largest homosexual population in America was targeted for extermination.
Let's shift back to the high-level corruption claims, especially around the Bush administration and the drug funding.
The sources allege that George Bush and his relatives used Panamanian banks to launder and manage drug profits from the Black Project funding scheme.
So the 1989 invasion of Operation Just Cause is reframed in this source as a betrayal.
Exactly, not a righteous cause. The goal, according to the documents, was to eliminate Manuel Noriega because he had started stealing from the Bush family's $350 million investment in Panamanian deals. And also to ensure the U.S. drug trade, which was essential for black funding, could continue under new, reliable management.
The sources also provide evidence of massive government drug involvement that was suppressed from public view.
Yes, the source cites a specific incident of a C-5 cargo plane seized in Delaware, found carrying 66 pounds of cocaine from Panama. This plane allegedly belonged to DEA agents and Air Force officials. The sources insist this incident, despite being proof of systemic government drug running, was immediately suppressed and wiped from public memory.
Which suggests powerful corporate and oil interests held influence above public policy, even during foreign conflicts.
That's the clear implication. The sources point out that while the U.S. was bombing Libya and had banned travel there, 5 huge oil conglomerates, including W.R. Grace, led by the head of the Knights of Malta, J. Peter Grace, were simultaneously dealing directly with Gaddafi. It suggests that international oil and drug connections, which are fundamental to the secret government's finances, completely trumped official U.S. foreign policy.
Okay, finally, let's explore this really complicated, fascinating element from the source material. An attempt by a rival group to create an entirely independent financial system to bypass this international financial cartel.
This is the effort led by the Sovereign Charter Trust Group and the International Equity Trust. The author details how this group tried to challenge the debt-based system by securing immense physical, auditable assets.
What kind of assets?
They claim to hold gold and silver deposits conservatively estimated to be worth over $183 billion, along with ownership of over 517,000 acres of real property.
So what was the goal of this alternative structure? It seems designed to undermine the core of the NWO's economic control.
The purpose was to generate immense, untainted liquidity by issuing long-term, private placement, prime capital notes. These notes were backed by the physical gold and silver, establishing a wholly independent credit facility. The aim was to fill the middleman's window in the secondary financial market, offering credit and capital outside the control of the Federal Reserve and the international banking cabal.
That's a huge claim, a non-competing shadow credit system backed by hard assets. How did they try to make this official?
The scale of their ambition is shown by a declaratory statement they sent in 1986 to the Fed chairman at the time, Paul Volcker. This statement disclosed a plan to allocate $500 million per U.S. state for a proposed United States economy system. It was presented as a non-competing alternative credit source to help state economies without involving the Fed's debt cycle.
And this effort stands in direct opposition to the debt crisis allegedly manufactured by the established powers.
Exactly. The source material details this counter-system in specific opposition to the ballooning national debt, noting Congress's debt had soared to $6.5 trillion from just $400 million in 1912. The underlying critique is that the established financial system intentionally perpetuates the lie that there's too much currency in the market while simultaneously creating astronomical debt as the ultimate control mechanism. This Sovereign Charter Trust Group, in this narrative, represented a genuine, though likely doomed, attempt to offer financial freedom.
We have completed a massive deep dive today. We've followed the source material from the elite's philosophical justification, this pursuit of benevolent slavery and genocide, through the economic enslavement of the silent weapon, the domestic police state of FEMA, the deep secrecy around extraterrestrial life, and these disturbing allegations of political murders and drug-funded black budgets.
It's a structure of total control that demands constant vigilance. And all while the public's minds are kept busy with no time to think.
If we connect all of these mechanisms back to the fundamental choice presented by the source material, the implication for you, the listener, is pretty clear. The elite's diversion strategy is a test.
It is. You must either accept that you've been managed as cattle and the ultimate consequence, which is slavery, or you must prepare to fight and, if necessary, die to preserve your God-given right to freedom. The success of the junk food for thought strategy is measured by the public's unwillingness to admit they've been deceived.
And their subsequent lack of preparedness to fight for their liberty. It's a dark prognosis. It suggests the New World Order is only prevented by the remaining commitment of individuals to their own liberty.
A commitment that the mind war and silent weapons are designed to erode every single day. But let's leave you with a final provocative thought, one that ties the alien secret back to the ultimate political goal of unification. The source material mentions President Ronald Reagan telling Mikhail Gorbachev that if the world were suddenly faced with an alien threat, we'd forget all the little local differences, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings on this earth.
Which mirrors the analysis in other documents about generating a believable external menace as a surrogate for war, a necessary threat to unite mankind under a single system.
Exactly. So, given the sources claim the elite already used the UFO narrative as a low-level disinformation campaign that failed to achieve unification, what form might the most credible and uncontroversial external threat take that hasn't already been used? One that would finally force the globe to unite under the New World Order, something to mull over until our next deep dive.